Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's weekly LinkedIn Live. Gotta love live TV. Um, uh, Kenneth Lang here. I have three special guests today: Stephanie D'Angelo, Boss DeBink. Is that right, or is it
I'm going to let you struggle there for a bit. Debbing, yeah.
Debbink and Michelle Martin? We all met through the New Start Career Network here in New Jersey. Michelle, this has been a wonderful undertaking. I have to thank you for being our fearless leader. And over
Thank
the
you for
years,
coaching.
well, it's been a labor of love. I've learned as much probably from the other people that are in transition as I've learned about myself. And I think it's so important to really understand that, because when you learn what people are going through, it makes such a big difference. So to those of you on the call, I'd love to know if you can put in the chat where you're, checking in from, while we talk about some of the challenges and struggles that our folk have, the 45 and older. And I see Terry Seaman is here, one of our friends. So, Michelle, I wanted to, I guess, ask you, how did you come up with the idea for having a service like this, like to have this together? Was it, yeah.
So the New Start Career Network actually was started in 2015. And at that time, what we were coming out of the last Great Recession, but coming out very slowly. And one of the things that the Heldrick Center for Workforce Development had been observing was that New Jersey, first of all, had a bad long-term unemployment problem. And by long-term unemployment, we mean out of work for 6 or more months. But beyond that, they observed that 50% of those who were long-term unemployed were over 45. And so at that time, they wanted to see what they could do to provide virtual support, attachment or opportunities to work with volunteer coaches and so forth as a way to support these individuals. I actually got involved with the New Start because I was a volunteer. I have a long background and had done other projects with the Heldrick Center, and I have a long background in career development and so forth. But I initially started as a volunteer coach and attended the first orientation for the coaches. And then at that orientation, one of the things that we realized is that the coaches themselves had a lot of questions about how they would be coaching. And so I initially came on board as the coach of coaches, where I was there to be a support for coaches as they began to work with job seekers. And then over time, it's evolved and changed and so forth. And I took on, additional responsibilities. But it really came out of a great need in the state of New Jersey. To really support individuals who are over 45 and out of work 6 or more months.
So Boss and Stephanie, as my fellow coaches, I mean, a lot of the things we talk about, even though this is a New Jersey program, they're very relevant to job seekers everywhere. And I wanted to put this program together to share some of our knowledge with the wider audience. So Boss, can you share some of the things that you've been finding over the last couple of years, some of the types of challenges that you've had in some of your different events and meetings?
Yeah, and it keeps coming up. So I've done some one-on-one coaching through New Start, and then also the weekly share and support sessions. And one major hurdle that I see with new job seekers, or even ones that have been unsuccessful for a while, is they don't know where to focus their efforts. They have especially people mid-career, they've had a lot of different experiences, and they say, well, I can do this, A, B, C, D, E, F, and so on. And that prevents them from focusing their job search, whether it's writing a resume or changing their LinkedIn profile or networking. They don't know how to start because their scope is too wide. And that has consistently been the first thing that I have worked through with a job seeker. You can't start with 10 things. Bring it down to 3, then bring it down to 2. Maybe if you're lucky, you can bring it down to this single point that you need to focus on. But that's the initial start.
Thanks, Ryan. Now, before I reach out to Stephanie, if anyone has any questions or comments they'd like to put in the chat, we'd love to hear from you, because we want this to be a conversation that we can all engage in and follow up on. Now, Stephanie, you do things from a little different way than Boss and myself. We're kind of like very specific with the networking and the LinkedIn and stuff. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing with your sessions?
Sure. My sessions are really focused on well-being in your search. So I totally don't focus at all on the job search. I focus on how do you be okay while you're going through this thing that can really, a long job search can really erode your well-being. So we offer mindfulness classes every week, motivation classes, and yoga. We've also offered things like art classes, and right now there's some social hour things to bring some social connection for people who may feel isolated. And really, this was my most wonderful luck to meet Michelle. I happened to be doing a project in my graduate classes on self-compassion for the job seeker, and I reached out to Michelle, and she was like, "Hey, we're doing this app. Are you interested?" It turned out to be one of the best experiences I've ever had, is to be able to take that kind of graduate work and put it into something that was really applicable to the time. It was the 2020 in October, right, Michelle, when that launched. That's the New Jersey Career Network Job Seeker Community. And that's where I met everyone here who had all previously known each other. But so yeah, my whole focus is on helping people learn how to take good care of themselves in this job search. They're getting lots of no feedback or critical feedback, their own inner critic. One of the major things we work with is your own inner critical voice during this job search. So,
and can I just say, I think that in particular for the people that we work with over the age of 45 is something that doesn't get as much attention as it should, but actually can be one of the biggest obstacles to the search. I know that there's a tendency to think that it's all strategy, and absolutely there are, things that you need to have a resume, you need to, have focus in your search, you need to have a LinkedIn profile. All of those things are important. And I think that some folks are in a place where they're able to focus on those things right away. But what I've personally found is that many people who get laid off over the age of 45, and honestly, I would say that our big pocket that we're working with are people in their 50s and then into their 60s. Most people have not had this experience before. They have typically gone from job to job. We often see people who are in senior positions in organizations. A layoff is an absolute just killer to their sense of self, their identity, their all of that stuff. And instead of being able to kind of mourn that and work with that and kind of deal with that, people are, of course, forced into immediately having to go out and sell themselves when they're dealing with a lot of stuff that is like, wait, am I not worth anything anymore, etc. And then the age thing becomes an even bigger challenge, because then people start getting out there and they're looking and they're networking, and sometimes they find that their networks have aged out, that people that they had relationships with are not available anymore. They're retiring or they've gotten laid off. A lot of folks are dealing with serious shame about being out of work, and then the longer it goes on, the more that shame can become debilitating. And so I really think that there's this whole aspect of sort of mental, emotional well-being that has to be addressed, that people have to really try to find ways to work with that and understand what may be going on, because it's very hard to sell yourself and have to be like, I'm brand me, if you don't feel great about yourself, and so right. That I think is just so critical.
So we have a question from Joey Himmelfarb. Interested in your thoughts about how to help mature job seekers compete in today's market. Asking for a friend, which is kind of a buzzword that a lot of job seekers say, is I really want to know the answer, but I'm asking for a friend. So any thoughts on that? Anyone want to chime in?
Well, first of all, hello, Joey. It's been a while. So it's nice to hear from you. I think that it's partly a mind game. You are competitive to the extent that you are confident about yourself and confident about what you bring to the table. And so finding ways that you can really zero in on the things that you do well, that are your strengths, that you are your best self at doing, I think can be really important, because that helps you, really sell yourself effectively. Obviously, I think you do have to look at, depending on the job that you're in or the job that you're going for, what are the skills that they're looking for? What kinds of things do you need to be able to do? How might the work have changed? And maybe you weren't aware of it. And so you do have to look at that kind of thing. But I really feel like if you're confident about yourself and what you bring to the table and are looking for organizations that match what you bring to the table, to have conversations with them, that's what you need to be competitive.
Yeah, and when you look at how things have changed from 2 years ago, a year ago. 2 years ago, nobody was hiring, and people were being laid off. A year ago, nobody was still hiring. Still, people were laid off. Now, people are hiring like crazy. So, job seekers who've been out of work are not just competing with other job seekers who don't have work, but with people who are employed and just looking to move to greener pastures. So, I think it's very important to keep that in mind as you build your own brand, so to speak, and join programs like this. What Michelle said earlier about identity being tied to your job. That's a big thing that job seekers have to get across, which why I think Stephanie's sessions are so amazing, because
Mhm.
that helps you realize I'm not just my job. There are
Mhm.
other components of me. And then being part of a community that kind of builds this trinity of support that is available to job seekers.
So RJ Anderson put in here, as a health check during my job search, I've adopted a lunchtime walk daily. And I think it's great to have a routine like
Mhm.
that, for
Mhm.
sure. I know when I was doing all my coaching and things, I always gave myself some me time out of the office time. Even though I wasn't actually out of the office, it was a chance for me to just decompress, and do other things. And Robert brings up a good point here too. The people I coached were great candidates and just needed some confidence, and they understated their accomplishments. And I think that brings me to it's very hard for people to talk about themselves. Just human nature.
Yeah.
Very hard for people, because I go through this with LinkedIn all the time. People don't want to put a lot of stuff in their about section because they don't want to come across as being too much of a bragging person. And I think that, I don't know if you guys agree with that, but that's something I've come across too.
So I have actually been a consultant for 25 years. This is in some ways a consulting gig for me.
Okay.
Doing this work. I've worked for myself and been a consultant for 25 years. I do not like to market myself. I do not like to talk about myself. I actually rarely do that. Instead, what I try to do is find the topics, the problems, the issues, the information that are important in my field, and talk about that. And find ways to talk about the stuff that I'm interested in, with other people who are also interested in the same kinds of things. And from that, opportunity flows. I think that one of the challenges that we have is that because it's a turnoff in some ways for people to be like, I'm so great. Look at, I could do this, 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 and this, right? But we are intrigued by and engaged by people who are talking about stuff that they feel passionate about, that they're interested in, that they have opinions about. And the more we can be trying to be in that space, I think the more naturally relationships can, start up, the more naturally opportunities will come to you, because people will be like, hey, I want to work with that person. I want to talk with that person. Or we need someone who brings those kinds of ideas and energy into our organization.
Definitely. Lynn Williams had a question here, and this would be, are you finding, and again, are you finding some digital immigrants, like people of our age, are lacking in the tech skills to compete with people that are younger, just starting out? So, I don't know that I find this a lot myself, that people of my age, it's not so much that we may lack the skills, but I think there's probably, in some cases, hiring managers may think twice about hiring someone who doesn't necessarily have those skills combined with other things. I don't know.
Yeah,
I,
I
I
think
don't.
actually,
Go ahead.
I think the last 2 years have actually been a bonus, because
Mhm.
now people have had to get used to video conferencing, video interviews,
Mhm.
writing resumes, dealing with crappy applicant tracking systems. So they were forced to upskill their technology expertise. Um, you do have to remember that with the speed of technology, and of course, me being a technologist, I love this question and this topic. With the speed of technology changing, even millennials, Gen Zs, by the time they learn a new skill, it's already outdated. So they have to constantly keep up to speed. Maybe they have a small advantage because they know where to find this new information, but that's a one and done deal. You can teach anybody, if you need a new skill, these are some of the areas where you need to look to learn yourself. And that's maybe the one change that happened. Prescriptive training over the past years no longer works. People are self-taught. So from that perspective, Lynn, they're not maybe not necessarily lacking the technical skills, but the self-teaching skills, and that can certainly be easily fixed.
Yeah, that's a really good point, boss, because it's something I've noticed too, is that I've had a lot of conversations with people where I've said, that's a great question for Google. Like, go, how do I do whatever? Somebody's done a video about it. There's going to be something on YouTube or LinkedIn. There's going to be some tip sheets, whatever. Um, I definitely have seen that there may be some generational differences in terms of how you go about learning skills, where there's been this idea that somebody's got to train me, as opposed to I'm going to go figure it out.
Well, I think also from the technology standpoint, the younger generation doesn't really remember pre-internet to the same extent that we do. I mean, how many times do we have to look stuff up, or ask for a training manual, or maybe look it up in a library? Now it's all online. I mean, I shouldn't have to ask. I'll just go online, look at a YouTube video, just read about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of second nature. I mean, it's become second nature, I think, to Boss and myself as IT folks, but it may not be for other people. And I think that's a big part of it. Is, it's like anything from when you're going somewhere, just put it in your GPS now, or anything you do. I mean, it's just the way things are, and just being able to, recognize that.
I think it's really important too to have an open mindset, like
Yeah.
that mindset that says, I don't know it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of us digital immigrants, we all had to learn it. And nobody was really showing us everything.
Mhm.
They're just like, go, and here you go. And then it changed a lot because it wasn't fully developed. And we had to
Mhm.
keep learning. How, if you think about your career, how many times you had to learn different networks when it was like expanded DOS, like, these little punch page. Now I'm just saying how old I am, but you know what I'm saying? We don't have anything. It's nothing like that anymore. I type my papers on a word processing
Mhm.
typewriter because I was upgraded from a regular typewriter. So
I
yeah.
actually think tech is easier now, because I remember when you would just get like the blinking cursor and now what?
Right.
I have no idea what I'm doing here. Now
We have to
I think it's
navigate.
actually easier.
What we're navigating now is like the AI in the back end. That's
Right.
like, wait a minute, why did it jump to that? Or why did it do that? That's just our matter of our frustration level. And that's why we have to feel good, even when we're looking for a job or when we're at a job. Our frustration level, we have to be honest about it, and we have to know, what our capacity is, and to make sure, like Ken, you were saying, like, make sure to take a walk, or our friend who said he took a lunchtime walk,
Mhm.
to make sure that that's built in, because we're going to have, there's going to be lots of challenges like that in the times to come, because what we're working with now, in a year will be very different. So
What I find kind of interesting is I used to do a lot of work from home. I used to be on call as a developer, and it was very second nature for me to be doing multitasking. And now that's kind of the norm for other industries. And it's great to see the resilience of people as they're able to do things and manage their abilities. I think that brings up the ability for all of us to do different things in different ways. I think in general, though, people of our age are our own worst enemies when it comes to job search. I think we put so many different hurdles in front that really don't deserve to be there. And I keep pushing. I saying, stop it. I mean, whatever's going on is going on. Just stop putting the hurdles up. I don't know if you guys will agree or not.
Yeah, I've been kind of getting more interested in this whole Stoic philosophy over the past few years, and I see it every now. Of course, now that I'm getting a little more experience in it, I see it every day. Yes, something happens, that thing happens. The way you respond to it is completely in your control. So, kind of making people aware what they can control and what they can't control, and then focus on, okay, this is actually something I can do about. It helps with their mental health. It helps with their time management. So I certainly agree with that.
Well, and this, when you say that, boss, and also going back to the multitasking thing, I actually think that one of the things that's going on, and Stephanie, I know you'll agree with me, is that there's a lot of, we're getting our fight or flight response triggered all day, every day, when we are job searching. That sense of us being in danger because I got rejected, because I'm thinking about, how am I going to pay my bill, and whatever, all of those things. We do not have a strong sense of social, psychological, and sometimes physical safety in the job search. And so what happens is we're in this triggered sort of fight or flight, over stress kind of mode. And what I find is that people start to become overwhelmed, and but the answer to their overwhelm often is to like speed up and do more. And like, what else can I dump on myself? Because, oh my God, I'm messing this up. And then you're just kind of spinning in this overwhelm kind of place. I've talked to job seekers where I feel overwhelmed listening to them talk about their search. I can feel it. Like I feel it. And so one of the things I think is really important is to think about, how can I calm my nervous system? This is why I think mindfulness is so important, going for walks. How can I, take breaks that help me, where I'm just focusing on how can I calm my nervous system? How can I soothe my nervous system? Because then I can start to see next steps. And the other thing I think is really important is slow down. Slow down, because when we're in that frantic mode of thinking about, I should do this and I have this, and that is when we're most likely to just shut down and do nothing. Or not be able to focus on the thing it is that we need to do. One of the things that we've done in the New Jersey Career Network community is the Pomodoro, where you do 25 minutes focused on one thing, and then you get a 5-minute break from it. I think those kinds of things can also be really helpful, because the multitasking, I frankly think, is part of what is overwhelming to people and helps and causes them to not be able to get stuff done.
And if I could just add something to that, when you're stuck in sympathetic, the way Michelle's explaining, it might seem similar to motivation, because there is a little sympathetic energy and motivation. There is a little dopamine. There is a little bit like, oh, I'll get this job. But the problem is, when you're stuck in that, you lose your executive functions. So everything I would need to get a job or do a great interview is gone. So I then have to have the wherewithal to know that I need to calm myself down. But how would I do that? Because I'm on adrenaline now and I'm go. So it is really important. It is the first thing that should be done, is that to find a way to get yourself into more of an autonomic balance. And that's what we do in our sessions. We talk about it. I think we're going to have coming up in the summer a new self-compassion for the job seeker. And I'm going to say people hate that phrase unless you're really suffering and you're like, yes, I need self-compassion. But let me just explain that what that self-compassion for the job seeker does is it works with the internal threat. So not only do you need to get a job, you need money, and it's not only in the job search. If you talk to people, they're waking up in the middle of the night, they're not sleeping, they're eating or not eating, or doing all these sympathetic activities to self-regulate, these adaptive responses. But when we do something like self-compassion for the job seeker, it helps with the thoughts, our internal threats. So I'm getting the threats from the outside. I have no job. I don't know what I'm going to do with my money. And I'm telling myself what a loser I am, or how bad I am, or how am I going to do this, or I can't believe this happened to me, or whatever the million things that we could say to ourselves are actually causing that same nervous system threat, as though a tiger was going to eat us right now. And so Michelle is completely right. That first thing to do is to figure out what's going on in here. Because you guys know you have coached people over and over, given them steps, almost done it for them, do exactly what they're asking for you, and you're asking for them, and they can't seem to get there. Back it up to that nervous system. It's always the answer. It is the primary field of awareness, is what is going on inside this body.
I think job search in many ways, again, it's very overwhelming and it's really hard, but you also lose a lot of control. It's a total loss of control, and that's a big part of it. Now, all of a sudden, I don't have any control over where I'm going to be going at a certain time and all that. So you want to take your control back by having attainable goals. And the attainable goal may be a very simple goal. You have to regain some of that control because you've lost your identity. At least is what a job seeker will say. I've lost my identity. I'm not. And I'll say to them, you haven't lost your identity. You've lost the place you worked at. You're still at the same skills. You're still the same person. And I know sometimes I play Dr. Phil at times with somebody. I don't necessarily mean to, but I kind of think about it from that perspective, because we're not judgmental as coaches. It's not our place to be that. And we're going to listen to some extent because it makes us more empathetic.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry. I mean, I'm looking at some of the comments, and clearly that a lot of people are expressing this sense of feeling overwhelmed, and I'd love to get back to some of them.
Sure. I'm going to actually put up
after the session where I can address them maybe a little more. But
this is what Dawn said. She literally slept for the past 2 days because she was burned out looking for a job, et cetera, et cetera. Eyes were burning from being on the phone or tablet all day. And I think that probably speaks to what you wanted to allude to, Boss.
Yeah, and that's where you actually can say to yourself, okay, we're taking a break. And I know I've heard Michelle say this. Look, if you're spinning the wheels on a hamster wheel, it's time to step off and say, okay, for 2 days, for 3 days, I don't know, Michelle, how long would you say that people need to take these breaks and really make it a break?
Well, I think it depends on where you're at, right? Like because I think that one of the first things we want to think about is, where am I at right now? What is my level of burnout, if you will? What is my level of overwhelm? And if it is, up here, I may need a week, to just but a week of finding ways that are going to help me calm, soothe my nervous system, help me reconnect to who I am as a person, not just a job seeker. What are my values? How can I do some things? There's something that's called values-driven behavior. That is part of, it's something called acceptance and commitment therapy. But basically the idea is, what are the things that are important to me? What are my personal values? And what are actual activities I can engage in that help me live those values? And so, doing those kinds of things help us sort of regenerate ourselves and get ourselves back. But I also think we have to think about, once I do that, how can I then create a healthier schedule for myself? Because I think this is a big issue. When you were working, you had your schedule, right? You knew you have to get up. These are I go to work. I have things that I do at work, and all of that is there. One of the big issues when you get laid off is there's no schedule. I'm totally in charge of what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, how I do it. Oftentimes other things start to fill in. Oh, you're not working. You can give people rides here, or you can check in, all this stuff starts to happen. And one of the things we lose control of is the schedule. And so I also think really getting clear with yourself about what is a schedule that I can really work with. One of the things that I say to people, and this is true, we know you only have about 4 to 5 hours of good focused mental work in you per day. Not 8, not 20. If you really want to, be focused, do high quality, that's what you have. So how can I make the most of those 4 to 5 hours of good, focused, deep, concentrated work? Then the rest of it is, how am I filling my well so I can do that tomorrow? And I think that that's part of it too, because it's the law of diminishing returns. Like I see this all the time. Or like you get to a point where it's like, I could keep working, but I'm accomplishing nothing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think hand in hand with that goes setting goals. I mean, you can work 4 or 5 hours going all over the place, but you're not going to be as effective or productive as if you say, this is what I'm going to do today. And can I do it in the 4 or 5 hours? Even if it only takes you 2 hours, but at the end, you'll feel a sense of having accomplished something, which I think will certainly help with your mental health and your feeling overwhelmed or your lack of self-worth. It's creating mini goals for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So Don brought up this point. I think it relates to what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Some have said that humans are not multitaskers, that multitasking only leads to increased time needed to finish a task, that it's better to finish one project at a time that uses less time than move on to the next. Once finished, you no longer need to look at it again. And I think that's very true. I know when I do my lists at times, when I do my list, I do the things I don't want to do first.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest things first, the call I have to make, the thing I have to do, because I feel that I've accomplished something. Because if I try to do too many things and I'm in the middle of something, it's like, oh, I have to call this one if I have to do that one. You don't get it all done, and then you get that much more frustrated that you haven't accomplished anything.
Well, the brain science actually is pretty clear on this. We don't actually multitask, we switch attention.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot work on multiple things at once, at least mental things at once. You are switching attention. And actually what's going on is the more you switch your attention, the more exhausted you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you feel so terrible at the end of a day where you've been frantically running around doing things, as opposed to a day where you really got deeply into a project or to that work. It's a different kind of tired that you feel when you have been like really focused and in the groove and in flow on something. You may have worked more hours, but you were focused. But it's the attention switching that is so exhausting to people, and it's bad for you. You really, it's not a good way to be. I certainly notice it myself.
Mm-hmm. And if you're switching your attention like that, where it just doesn't seem like you have control over it, you're better picking something, taking a break, stopping, pick something that can make you feel like you have some efficacy, like cook something or fold laundry or do some task that makes you feel like you have some sense of efficacy, and then go back to that original task. And you may find that you actually have the power to actually stay on that task positive. You'll have that task positive attention. So there are ways to work with your attention. And, I know mindfulness is like a big buzzword, but the truth is it teaches you how to stabilize your mind and move your attention where you would like it to be. And it does take some time to practice, but it is really an important concept in being able to stick with what you choose to stick with, what you want to get done. Really, really powerful work it is.
Boss, did you want to add anything?
My mind was going all over the place because of something Stephanie. I wasn't multitasking. I was not switching attention. But something Stephanie said got me on this train of thought. Doing some kind of physical activity after being so in your mind for hours and hours is a great way to switch that off. But that is a very white collar view at job seekers. If you work with your hands a lot in manufacturing, in creation, and you're no longer doing anything, you lose a whole sense that you're used to having. So that's where my mind was going. Like, that'd be an interesting thing to ask other people about, to see what their experience is like, because face it, I would say over 90% of the people on LinkedIn are more the mind workers rather than the physical workers. And I'm generalizing greatly, I realize.
I can't remember the name of the book, and I actually wanted to take a look at it because I've seen some articles about it. But it's basically this idea that we don't just think in our brains. We also actually do think with our hands and with and that we should be we kind of reached the limits of our brains, and we need to be looking at what are ways that we can extend that into our outer world, because we also think through building things and through creating what's the word I'm looking for? No, see, I can't think. We create through, mind mapping, and those, there are ways that we can sort of extend out from our brains that can be helpful.
Embodied cognition, is that what it is? Yeah. And that's like that. It's just the integration. So if you're somebody who works with your mind a lot, it might not be as easy to work with your body, but maybe your break should be something physical. And if you're somebody who works with your hands a lot, my point about taking the break and doing something else, task positive, something else, is to find some efficacy. So if I am an artist, maybe I'm going to draw something. Michelle has hosted sessions where she does beautiful artwork, and it gives the sense of efficacy. And that's the important piece, because we lose that when we lose our job position, because we meet deadlines, we meet goals, and we meet those goals. But when we're job searching and we never hear, or we get an interview and then it doesn't go well, like, we don't get that efficacy that a job will give us. And some people, suffer more from that. The identity of the job is really important to people. So we must find things that are unrelated to job search or work in the day that give us some sense of efficacy. And for some people, it's gardening. For some people, it's reading, poetry. Doesn't have to be like a physical thing. But when we integrate the physical with the mental and the emotional, that's like the trifecta. That is why self-compassion is such a big deal, because we want to integrate the emotions, the mind, and the movement. And that is what regulates the autonomic nervous system. And as you see, it'll always come back to that for me, because it is how we were designed as organisms. And if we work with that, then we can perhaps get everything we want.
I also think it's important not to feel that you have to go through this alone. I think job search is a very solitary process, and I think one of the things that we all try to do is get people together, because the social aspect has definitely changed over the last couple of years, but to at least get a chance to see people's faces and listen to them, I think that helps a lot, almost as much as the topic, because you lose that, and I look forward to going back to some things in person, but I love the opportunity to even chat, even the four of us chatting. We haven't really had a chat in a while, and this is really great, just to be able to talk.
Yeah, and of course, when you're introverts, like half of us, then the thought, oh wow, even more. Then the thought of mingling with other people is daunting, but it is so necessary, and that's how I ended up becoming a volunteer coach, because I was also in transition for much longer than I expected, and got so much benefit from being with people who are in the same situation and realizing you're not going at it alone. So when my situation changed, I wanted to give back because I saw how enormously beneficial that was for everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we're
I think
wired for that social
yeah.
support. Yeah.
I think expectations is also something to think about. Like, what expectations are we putting on ourselves? I talked to a job seeker who's actually a coach for us. He had been in transition. And when he lost his job, he said to himself, because of the level of job that he was looking for, he said, it's going to take me a year to find a new job. I'm going to come up with a plan. I am, I'm going to work my plan, but I understand that given the level of job I'm looking for, the market and so forth, it could take me up to a year. Because he had that expectation, he was not constantly saying to himself, what's wrong with you? Because he had an expectation that it was going to take him longer. And it was really interesting how that had a different impact on him. Because he wasn't expecting he was going to find something in 2 weeks, or 3 months or whatever. He expected that it was going to take longer. So I think it's helpful for us to think about what are the expectations that we're putting on ourselves, and are they reasonable or unreasonable given, everything that's going on. But then the other part of that, I think, is how do we set goals and track progress? So every day, if your goal is to get a job, every day that you don't get a job, you're failing. And you know that. And like, that's you're like, I didn't meet my goal today. I think also really looking at what are much smaller goals that I can set for myself that are achievable. I want to meet 2 people this week. I'm going to meet 2 new people that I haven't met before and have a conversation. That's reasonable. And they don't even have to be on LinkedIn or, it's just, I'm going to meet two new people. That's something that we can achieve. And when we start to see, I'm achieving goals, then that feeds on itself. But I also think keeping track of small wins, and they've actually done research on this through Harvard, where keeping track of small wins, no matter how small, the win can be, I got up this morning. That's a win some days, but keeping track of small wins helps people see progress. And the more you see progress, that can also, be something that boosts your mood.
So, Stephanie, any parting thoughts? Because I always like to be respectful of time, and in the scheme of things, I always end these by a quarter of or so, because people have 2:00 meetings and things, and I've learned the hard way that if you go from one meeting to the other, it's nearly impossible to be refreshed. So, any final thoughts, Stephanie?
Sure. I just would like to say that for anybody out there who hasn't had a chance to look at the New Jersey Career Network Job Seeker community, we love to see you. Social support is one of the #1 things that really helps people feel better, regulate their nervous system. We work with that all the time in the share and support, the social hours, the live sessions, and I don't think you really find that anywhere else. So we would love to see you. We'd love to meet you, and love for you to be a part of our community.
Great.
And thanks, Ken, for
How about
inviting
you,
me.
boss?
Nothing that hasn't already been said. I think the most important message is you're not on this by yourself. You see the people engaging in this this session. You've heard stories. Other people have been where you are still in the same situation you are in, and don't tie your identity to the fact that where you are right now. That's not you. That's just your circumstance. Thank you, Ken, for pulling this together.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And Michelle, thank you very much for being our leader.
Well, thank you for the opportunity for us to, be able to help everyone. We could not do what we do without you guys. So thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. And guys, you are my 99th LinkedIn event. Next week is number 100. So we're going to have a party about that. But thank you very much, everyone. I look forward to seeing you. Go through the chat when it's over and follow up with people. And this will be recorded if you have a chance to watch it later. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks. Thanks
Thanks,
a lot.
everyone.
Thank you.